Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next act has over a decade of time poured into their catalog. Taking indie folk and crafting it in an alternative and cinematic way, every project truly takes you on a journey. Welcome, Cold Weather Company, also known as today, Steve.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm glad to be here on behalf of my bandmates Brian and Jeff as well. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you.
I always like to start with where your music journey all began, and that can stem personally as well as for the band and how you
Yeah,
guys kind of came about.
totally. So I'm our pianist and one of the three singers, since we all sing lead, depending on the song. I started taking piano lessons as a kid back when I was 5 or 6, classical lessons. And then when I got to college, this is where I started kind of experimenting, playing my own music. And it led to me going to an open mic on campus where I met Brian and Jeff, who they both play acoustic guitar and were singer songwriters. And I met them both, and I was like, wow, these guys are really good. And it turns out they had met each other on a park bench. This is Rutgers, New Brunswick in New Jersey. They met each other on a bench on campus, and they can tell the story better than I can. But basically, one of them was walking to class with his guitar. The other one was playing guitar with a friend on the bench, and they saw each other. They had the same guitar case, same type of shoes on, and one of them was wearing a shirt for an artist that they both loved. So obviously they started talking, and they're like, "Hey, we should play together sometime." So this was 2011. I met them in 2012. Yeah. And then it turns out they had been looking for like a third member. They'd been trying to build out a band, and they didn't want to have another guitarist or anything because they, already had two. So when they saw that I was a pianist, we connected. And then it was a year later when we finally, after texting and being like, we should jam sometime, we met up in 2013. And we were playing in my building on campus. And a friend came by and was like, hey, are you guys a band? And so I looked around. I was like, I don't know, guys. Are we like labeling this or is this a band? So the friend invited us to play an event that their organization was hosting. And it went really well afterwards. We played the one original song we had and two covers. And so November 15th, actually, which we, just hit, it was the first day. November 15th, 2013 was our first ever show. So it kind of marked our bandhood. And long-winded to say after that, we went back and forth figuring out a band name and landed on our name. And the rest is history, basically.
So, where does the name come from? I feel like those are always interesting stories. How did you land on Cold Weather Company?
Yeah, well, so since you have the context now, we went back and forth. We had a temporary band name for this show, and that is lost to the history books now, where we don't talk about it. But we have, the text, and we had some like mood board sort of things, and trying to figure out what our music meant, obviously. And eventually, we landed on a combination that used CWC. So we liked that the words, we liked the flow, we liked that there were three of us, and each word kind of matched. And from that combination of words we had, we then got to Cold Weather Company because we formed in November. It was getting colder. I know just before we went live, you and I were talking about the weather a bit and the seasons and everything. And our music is, especially in the early days, so much of it was built from different experiences with nature and it still is, but those formative songs were definitely a key factor. And the act of us actually writing and spending time working on music together during these months formed the company that we were for each other while while writing. So Cold Weather Company had a nice flow to it, and over time, one of the best compliments we can get is when listeners say it's been company for them during cold weather and any time of the year. Like one joke we always get is, "What do you guys do during the summer?" And it's like, well, we still write music, we still release music, and sometimes it's cold in random parts of the world. So we try to be evergreen with our music, and yeah, that's basically it.
No, I mean, there definitely are like, aren't there other like there's other like areas of the world out there that are on kind of opposite seasons of us. So like truly,
Yeah.
you maybe you guys just have to migrate there for part of the year and then just kind of stay where the
Yeah.
cold is.
I would love to go to Australia. I know they're experiencing summer pretty soon. So if I time it right,
Yeah.
maybe I'll go with a friend or something and yeah, be able
Yeah.
to play there.
I think that also like what's really I love the ring that the name has to it, like you said, like it has
Thank
a
you.
good kind of flow, but also like there's a certain warmth I feel like to a lot of your guys' music that it's like it kind of in its own like you can think of Company in terms of people saying that it's Company in the cold weather and how you guys view it in terms of like the context and the content of the songs themselves, but also just the sound I feel like has kind of because it's got the folky and the more
Yeah.
acoustic some acoustically driven stuff in there. It's very it has that added warmth. So it's like it's kind of also fitting in that way where it's like, cold weather, warm music.
Yeah, the best of both worlds. No, I appreciate that. And I'm sure the guys would too. We yeah, we've always strived to kind of just have genuine music and write from a genuine place for each of us and not really have to shape anything more than that. Like just hope that what's coming out feels right. And I think listeners like yourself, like they are able to connect with that and feel that there is that warmth that you can't really force.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I'm very pro acoustic like as foundation of music, so like
Sure.
this
Yeah.
it's that's right up my alley. What is kind of the writing process for you guys being that you're a trio, if you will, and what kind
Yeah.
like what inspires a lot of your songs? What does that kind of look like from idea to, you know, listeners'
Yes.
ears?
So since we're pretty close to our anniversary of November 15th, 2013, it's crazy. It's already been now 12 years, but that first album we mixed some of each of our solo songs, like we each contributed a song or two. And then we spent time just in a room and writing, and either there'd be a lyrical idea that would pop up or something instrumental. And over the years, we've just kind of kept that. Sometimes one of us will be traveling or have an idea and just send a recording that will connect. And our new album In Time, which we just released in June of this year, it has a song called Levitate that kicks it off. And we have a video that I made a couple weeks back where I looked at the old text I'd sent Jeff and Brian, and I sent them a recording of just this piano melody that would become Levitate. And Jeff specifically commented saying, like, oh, I have some ideas, like this is cool, whatever. And then, a year and a half later, it turned into a song. But sometimes it's as simple as just connecting to that initial riff or melody. And sometimes some of these songs on this new album and previous ones, they're just truly, we're in a room and we got in a cycle for 30 minutes on some chord progression or something, and something clicked. And we're just very, I think we're all very fortunate that we can unspokenly just connect with each other. Obviously, it's been many years, but even in the early days, we could just all tell with like there was something. And and now we have over 70 original songs and never a lack of ideas because if one of us is having a creative block, then there's a pretty good chance that someone else has something cooking, and it's just a matter of sitting together and working through stuff. And yeah, so each song is a little different though too. So some are ones that I lead or Brian leads or Jeff leads lyrically, and then theme wise, just to because I know you asked, kind of a whole mix. Sometimes it'll be these true experiences we had that we've just tried to shape. A couple on the new album, especially look back at our bandhood over this decade, really, and the experiences we had together. And some are shaped by stories we heard or stories we've made up. And that seems pretty standard for a lot of songwriters, but there are a lot of moments that we also hop in and like maybe I'll write the verse for one of the songs and one of the guys will write the lyrics for a bridge or something like that and offer contribution from wherever they're at too. So hopefully that answers.
No, it does. I'm curious then if, sometimes which naturally it makes sense that different of you kind of take the lead with, you know, like you said, the lyrical ideas and things like that. How is it like, is it very typical in practice that the person whose idea it was then is the person who does lead? Because I know you said that all three of you sing and it depends on the song. So is it like, is it because, hey, it originated with you, so you just kind of let it, or how does it land on whoever it lands on?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. There's still a mix. Generally, that is true that if somebody had the idea first, it just feels like the connection is the strongest, especially when it comes to lyrics. Instrumentally, like our instrumental songs, we're very, yeah, we're even more like mixing things in, but we do all feel lyrics are especially personal. And there are times obviously where we chip in and work on lyrics together, but we do like to allow the flexibility that, hey, if you're feeling a lyrical idea for this melody, there must be a reason and we want to allow you to explore that. And and then on the flip side, after having written dozens of songs and always wanting to make sure that they're they're uniquely written while also still being our genuine sound, we have been like, well, let's flip this and let's see, Steve, like, why don't you write something for this? Or we have a song called Gettysburg that I sing lead throughout, but Brian wrote the lyrics for the last couple minutes that I sing. And so we have that sort of trade-off too. And I think it keeps us all creatively inspired to just try these new things and not feel like we're in a box in any way. So
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, you do have options, and it's always, I feel like you're probably one of the more uncommon cases to have not necessarily multiple people that can do the lead, but all of you can take that on at different times. Again, like you said, depending on the circumstances and all that, which is really cool.
yeah, thanks.
If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what
Mm.
would it be called?
Yeah, that's a good question because I mean, in today's streaming world, that is a very important conversation. I'm sure you know just how prevalent playlisting is and that whole space of just, you know, streaming platforms just base it on the main genre. So as a baseline, yeah, we do say like how you introduced us, indie folk, alternative, orchestral, or cinematic. I think cinematic folk is not fully new, but it is the newest way that we've been expressing ourselves more often because one of the other best compliments we get is when somebody says that they feel like they're either being transported or that our music is bringing them to a scene from a movie or a TV show or just some other place, right? And obviously we have our ideas in our heads while writing, and the songs of ours that are based in other places or thematically based there. And so cinematic cinematic folk just feels like let's lean into that more and really try to say, yeah, we are trying to write for your journeys, your adventures, and while sharing our own. And I think too, maybe we'll get to it some more, but our mix is we have the indie folk side, we have the singer-songwriter folkiness. We have a lot of jam band inspired music. Jeff especially is hugely into Grateful Dead and Dave Matthews Band and a bunch of these other artists. And then we have more of like some of the indie rock elements. And what I was going to mention earlier about the way we formed is that I never thought I'd be in a folk band because one, piano's not as common, and the music that inspired me to start writing my own was like Two Door Cinema Club and Phoenix and Coldplay from a piano perspective and everything. But it was generally more like indie pop, you know. And so we try to blend all of it and hope that the playlist world also, not that that's our only focus, obviously, but it's important that we have our own sound, but playlists also want you to like fit in these boxes. So we try to keep staying true to our own thing, and maybe there'll be a cinematic folk playlist that's truly just like our own stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we live in the age of, and part of where this question comes from is and I feel like the more music has evolved, it's like we had pop and rock and hip hop and country and all these things, but then it's like, no, there's like, I mean, there's been different subgenres even like for decades like that, but it's even like further and further like everything has its own little pocket because of
yeah,
the way that we consume music has become so accessible. So you could listen to Two Door Cinema Club and then Dave Matthews Band back to back songs like it's
yeah.
nothing. And then, we're just a product of everything that we consume. And so how do you like, even if you're not trying to draw from all those influences, you kind of just naturally are because
Yeah,
that's just what you know.
which is also the name of a Two Door Cinema Club song. What you know, coincidentally. But yeah, that's exactly right. And like I'm so grateful to be a musician in a time that has so much access to music and art in general. And I think that is always just like making us excited to try uh, new components to our music. And if you listened from our catalog since the beginning, you'd hear how it started, especially acoustic. But then eventually, by our second album, we added a couple songs with drums and bass and strings. And then we experimented with that more and more, and eventually some synths and other, electronic sounds. And while always having that foundation, like all the songs were still always written as the three of us, generally in a room together. And I also wanted to ask if I can flip this real quick and just ask about your music background. So what led to you wanting to make a podcast? And
Um,
there's yeah.
I appreciate the question. So I come from a creative music background. I grew up playing piano. I took
Hmm.
guitar in college. I
I
studied
see that
music
one in the
production.
back there.
Yes, yeah. Write and release my own stuff. I have my own
Hmm.
artist project and I do some stuff on the business side as well. But um, going into my senior year of college, wanted to do, I was, it was, I graduated in 2022. So like my upperclassmen years of college were like peak TikTok being a thing. I tried to just kind of grasp onto that as much as I could. I
Sure.
learned how big the independent music space was. I had no idea that I was a very much smaller percentage point than I thought I was. Um, so I wanted to do something that was more of like a resource and then I went back to college and I'm grateful that I didn't start anything because if I had started it, it probably would have died in September because
Hmm.
started my senior year of college and then came out of it and I
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
wanted to do it. And I was like, well, if I've been sitting on this idea for a year, let's do it. And then I came up with the concept. I'm very brand and foundational oriented in the way that I view things. I work a lot with branding and other things like that, but I wanted to do something that was different. I didn't want to just talk about the new song, promote the new release. Like I wanted to ask artists questions about being artists and how they perceive their experience and the music piece of it and, ask goofy questions like make up your own genre. So, yeah, so it's been
Yeah.
3+ years in the running now. So, yeah,
That's
just,
great. Well,
yeah.
I'm sure I speak for all the artists you've worked with who we appreciate that there are people like you and who care enough to try to support other artists and like you're saying, learn the more unique aspects of the craft, if we want to call it a craft. Did you have I'm always excited to talk about my time in college as a college radio DJ. And
Oh,
I mean, that shaped my whole music discovery and just a huge part of it. But did you do anything like that in college? Did your school have a radio or music business thing you
we
said?
did. I completely forgot about it at this point, but I think I applied. I don't know if I ended up interviewing or what, but
Huh.
it was like a thing. I went
Yeah.
to Western Michigan, and I didn't end up getting involved, but we did have it, and I knew some people, like some of the people in my program were a part of it and everything. So
Yeah.
college radio is, I mean, it's still going, and a lot of colleges very strong still.
Hmm.
So which is always great to see. As much as I love being able to listen to whatever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah.
It's always refreshing to get in the car and listen to the radio, and stuff like that, and just kind of not let that part of music die, if you will. Because I think that like it's played a huge part in a lot of the way the industry has grown.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I had the show, I mean, it was a while, even before the band started, I figured I'd get into the music industry. Like that was my hope to be on the label side or do something. I also have like a digital marketing background, and probably some similarities with your work. And then the band started more, and I decided, okay, I'll shift and be on, try to stay on the creative side. But at the radio station, I had friends on, like Jeff and Brian both came on and played solo in our early days. I got to ask a lot of those same types of like interview questions. I got to feel like a music interviewer for different parts of my life. And there was a time, I've had little blog entries sort of things over time. And yeah, I love like both sides of being able to do it, to share music you love and to be able to create too. It's really special. So
Yeah, no, and I think being able to have these conversations and do the podcast like this, which I always say that I would have these conversations even if I didn't record them and put them online,
yeah,
because it's always great to just like I feel like you're putting yourself more in that environment, and surrounding yourself then with people that are like-minded in that kind of creative way and everything like that. So it kind of keeps it more front of mind while there are other normal life things that we still have to do and still take
yeah,
up time. And so it's always good to have things like this.
I agree. And now we can get back on track.
Um, is there a release or a song you've written that you think best embodies who you guys are as a band? Kind of like a one song sample, if you will, of like what you would use as a selling point to someone that you think should listen to the rest of your catalog, should become a fan, come to a show,
Hmm,
whatever you want to call it. You have a lot to choose from, so
I know. Well, I think there's one classic that I think the guys would agree with, which is our song "Wide Eyed," and it's it's just it was released in 2016 as part of our second album. And going back to kind of how we've written songs, this one was particularly special because we had a recording. One night we met up and we just played together for a while, and we're always just recording. And we listened back to it a year later or so. And in this 30-minute recording, there was probably a minute or two that had the melody that would turn into Wide Eyed. So it was this, like we went back to it at some point. I think we were all on the drive somewhere just listening back to old stuff. And we thought, oh, there's something here from this recording that we kind of tossed to the side a year ago. And we went back to working with it. Brian especially felt some lyrics that connected with him. And so we just had to go writing it. In terms of also showcasing us as a band, I mean, it has all of the traditional elements of our playing styles, and then we do trade off some vocals where I sing the bridge and I wrote the bridge based on where I was at. And so that one is just always special for us. It's one we're never tired of playing. We just recently, a couple weeks ago, recorded a live session of some songs that we'll be probably releasing in the next couple months. The Wide Eyed, of course, is one of those. And then if I can just add another one, because we have so many, and because we just put out this new album, it's called In Time, the album, and the song is In Time, Echo Song. And I think that's a great representation because it does kind of look back at our whole history. Each of us have a verse, especially from where we're at when writing this. And the whole feeling of that song just helped shape that album. And one of the most fun things is having all the songs together and then getting to figure out the name of the album. And we're always looking back and we go across lyrics and you know, we don't usually have an idea for the album name from the start. And In Time stood out to us for a couple of reasons. And that song, it is more of our acoustic folk origins. It's not synthy or doesn't have this or this, but it's just a great way to have a little bit of all of our history in there. So
Do you think, like, are there any, given that there's like new album and second album, not necessarily all the way back to the beginning, but pretty far back,
mhm.
given that it's covered such a drastic gap of time, are there any like clear parallels, I guess, if you will, between the two, even though, so much time has passed and obviously your sound evolves and things like that, but are there any like clear like staples of the two that you think make it very clearly like we're still who we are?
I I think so. I mean, there are like In Time is one of the, like I said, truer, folkier songs on there. There are a handful more, but the benefit of the writing process for this album is unlike our fourth album, which was released in 2021, and we are incredibly proud of it, because of the pandemic, we didn't write as much in person together. We had ideas, we had a lot, but we each also took some more initiative remotely. And being able to get back and write with each other throughout 2022 and 3 and 4, I guess, I think the first writing when we knew it was new music was in 2022. And so I think it comes across like this band was fully in a room working on these songs together. And that brings us fully back to the original days of writing. And there are a lot of little nods to either lyrics from the first album or the second album. I mean, there's a lot of Easter eggs for anyone who knows all of our stuff, but as just one example, I'll mention our song Let Your Love Last, which is on the new album. Jeff took the lead with it, and but we were jamming it for a while, and it was just a lot of fun. And then I have a piano solo where I just kind of took two riffs from our first album, and I play. There's a part from Horizon Fire, which is the first song we ever wrote, and there's a part from Garden, which is our only mostly instrumental track on that album. And so there's a lot of that intentional, like I don't I don't call it laziness because it is intentional, just like, yeah, I want to add in these riffs that meant something and are part of the whole journey. And so someone who catches up on our catalog will probably pick up on some of those.
um I'm curious how you'll take this next one because you have to incorporate the others as well, but if you had to
Mm-hmm.
pick two or three artists that you think your music is like a combination of, who would you choose?
Yeah, okay, I'll go with three. So we each have one, and then I imagine what the guys would say. Um, Fleet Foxes has always been a big one. Brian especially, but we all listened to all the same artists, which was cool. Like in different ways. Like I listened to Fleet Foxes before I knew the guys, but it just didn't shape. I think if I was a guitarist, I would have been more drawn to how they write. But anyway, Fleet Foxes, that sort of cinematic folky atmosphere. If we add in something Jeff would say, Dave Matthews is a classic because he was a huge influence in the way that he plays and what inspired him to start learning. But I would also say Dispatch and Chad Stokes from Dispatch are big factors. And then for me, um, yeah, it's between an early Coldplay and early Keane and early Muse. Any of these English piano piano bands. Um, yeah, and then Coldplay got tricky because eventually they got so poppy and like, and I love all their stuff. Don't get me wrong, but then in 2015 to say, yeah, we're kind of like Coldplay, and Adventure of a Lifetime would just come out or whenever that was. I'm like, so we have to kind of shape the moments, but there's a whole mix. But yeah, I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, Coldplay has definitely evolved. Because if you look at
Yeah.
like clocks in that era, and then you look at
Hmm.
I can't remember what the name, but one of them off the album we were just talking about, it's like they're night and day almost in a way. It's still Coldplay, and we've had some obviously some
Yeah.
steps along the way, but they've evolved so much.
And
Um,
they're still the best. I've seen them twice in New Jersey, and one of my best friends and I went to see them, and we've been just huge fans. And go figure, they release an album at like pivotal times in our lives when I'm sure you've been there when you're like, wow, I really needed a new album from this band at this time in my life. And Coldplay's just been one of them. And seeing them live with the stadium and the joy that everybody had, like in the audience, the lights and it was just like
they put on
a
a
feeling that,
show.
yeah. And I was like, man, I wish I could just inject this feeling like all the time. But yeah, and hopefully I'll see them. They keep saying they're going to be done touring, after this stretch of touring. So hopefully I'll see them at least once more. But
Yeah, they're on my list. I didn't know that they were talking about not doing it anymore, which means I need to go look and see if there's a way I can
yeah,
make that happen. But it could be like Elton John and his farewell tour, and just he'll like
yeah,
do like four of them, where it's like, okay, I'm done, and then it's like, well, maybe I'm not done, and then
yeah. And I think Chris has said, I say Chris as if we're friends, but Chris Martin has said that he just decided like, yeah, we only want to have this X amount of albums, and after that, he's still going to write, but maybe there'll be singles or whatever else coming out. But
hmm.
who are some of your favorite artists, and anyone who shaped you as a songwriter?
Um, I mean. Interestingly enough, which my catalog would not at all suggest it, John Bellion was like the reason I kind of
Sure,
started
yeah,
writing music. I've loved his stuff for a very long time. Um, but I mean, I'm very much in the Maggie Rogers, James Bay, like folk pop,
yeah, yeah,
probably with
yeah,
a little bit more pop influence than folk. But um, yeah, I mean, kind of in that wheelhouse, somewhere in there,
no,
I
those
would
are
say.
those are great. Yeah,
But
I've been seeing a lot of John Bellion videos on TikTok where he I guess similar to like Jacob Collier, who he's like building out an orchestra
yeah.
live in the set and doing loops and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah. What was the maybe my Spotify's not open. What was his big like initial song that I
The one that was the only one I think that's probably ever been on the radio. All Time
oh
Low.
maybe all
All
time
Time
low.
Low was his big one from his album, and I always want to say it's 2014, but I think it's like 2016 or 2017 actually. Um,
Let me
that was
see
his that
real
was his one
quick.
that was like
All
the one
time
everybody
low. Huh.
knew. Um,
Huh.
but he's done a lot
I
of cool
don't even
stuff, and he's
oh,
he has videos on YouTube that are like the making of. And those are really
hmm.
always really cool. Because there are things like he's one to me that, and there are other artists out there like this, but it's kind of like watching a show back where it's like, oh, I didn't pick up on that joke like the first time I watched this.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like things with him. It's like I didn't know that was in the song until I saw him put it in the song. Like it's just there's so many different
Hmm.
little like accent things that just
Yeah.
kind of shape it to what it is, but you don't really it's not front and center and you don't really pick up on it unless you are so used to everything else that that's the new thing.
Yeah. That I'll have to like listen to more of his music. I just looked and Money Right was the song that I knew
Oh,
back. So this
okay.
is a
That's
yeah,
even yeah,
2014
that's
album,
okay,
and
yeah.
I really only know that one. Maybe Carrie. I definitely because this was my junior year of college, so I can remember I had to have been on the Rutgers bus with my big headphones and like zoning out to him and like that song and a bunch of others in that time. Yeah, that's. But it's. I mean, there's so much music out there and all these artists. I'm like, wow, I
Yeah.
love that they've kept it going. And then now there's so many artists that are coming back for their like, they have a 20th anniversary new album coming out or this kind of thing or this. So we're heavy in nostalgia these days, but I'm not really
Yeah.
mad about it.
Right. Well, and like in the movie world, you're getting all these biopics and it's like what's
Yeah.
happening? Like great, like great that the artists are getting recognized, and I love a music movie. Like I'm all
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that. But it's just I feel like there's been an influx over the last like 5 years of just kind of not necessarily recreating something that already was, but creating from something familiar rather than new ideas. I think people are
yeah,
fearing
yeah.
the new ideas in the world of, like you said, the nostalgia and everything now.
I think that's a big part of it. And I think speaking on behalf of millennials, because you're not a millennial, right? Yeah, because
I am
so
not.
speaking on behalf of millennials, we are especially keen on nostalgia. And I mean, the amount of channels I see or profiles I see that are like just posting old PlayStation 2 videos of gameplay or like the type of toys you would get for Christmas back in it's I mean, I do think we were the great spot of growing up without internet and then having internet and that like pretty good mix. But the amount of videos I see that I'm just like, wow, I guess we are all millennials leaning into this nostalgia because of the state of the world or anything else. But,
Yeah.
that's for another thing. But it is just it's on my mind a lot. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I am very grateful to have like when, Instagram became a big thing, I think I was like in middle school. And so like not having that even be an option at a younger age,
yeah.
very grateful for.
I think
I
about it.
got
I'm
out of
like,
high
wow,
school before COVID, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had it in
You really
college,
had some good
but
time.
like still it wasn't too bad. Actually, some of those classes going online wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's always interesting to see, and obviously as you get older and you realize more and more of like how different things are now and how much it is like I'm glad that I went through what I went through when it was, rather
Yeah.
than dealing with it at a younger age like now. So yeah.
Yeah, and you probably, I mean, this is to any listeners who aren't millennials or older, they're gonna be like, this guy's so old. But you you don't have Facebook, or you
I
do for
do. I don't
the
really use it
page
all
now,
that much,
but
but
yeah. And then like I remember when Snapchat came out, and I don't have it. I was so proud when I finally stopped using Snapchat because I was on just so many social media platforms. So I was like, I don't
yeah.
need this or that. But Vine is making a comeback. Apparently, I
Fine.
just saw
That's
this the
what
other day.
yeah, I heard that. I'm curious as to what that'll look like. I know I saw somebody say something about like it's gonna have something in it where it'll detect if something is like an AI video and it won't allow
Yeah,
that. So I'm curious to see what Vine looks like because it like to some degree it's the platform, but and to another degree it's like that's what social media was at the time. I feel like Vine's gonna look a lot different in terms of content than it did before because we've had like all these years of TikTok and stuff now, and
yeah.
everybody and their brother has their version of TikToks and Reels and so I'm
Shorts and
interested to see.
everything.
Yeah, Facebook has it, Twitter even has it, LinkedIn has it. Like we're just completely
Yeah.
everybody has short form vertical video now. So what is Vine
Yeah.
ultimately going to be? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, I feel like I mean, and you surely get this as someone who also has to promote your music and in your podcast and brand. It's like, well, you kind of can't not be on all these platforms. So like when Vine or I guess Divine, the way they're rebranding, I guess when that comes out, like we're gonna have to be on it and at least like try
Yeah.
out some stuff. And like I'm on Blue Sky. I don't post that consistently, but yeah, that was a whole thing of and then just the hours in the day to be managing everything
Right. Right.
and it's like yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Well, I don't, the time of day, I don't know if you were talking about it just in terms of being on it or just from like from the, people always are like, what's the best time to post? That narrative I never buy into. And
Yeah, yeah,
I fear the narrative a little bit of being everywhere. Just from the standpoint of it's one more thing to do.
yeah,
Unless you're somebody that just like schedules all that stuff out and then it's just one more button to click and that we can do.
yeah.
But you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It just depends on how you look at it because it's like more time, but
Hmm.
it's also like opportunity. So, but yeah, definitely interested to see what it looks like. I don't even remember why it died in the first place.
I don't know. Yeah, lack of funding or something. I don't. It's a good
Maybe.
question, but yeah, I mean, there was a point when I was my full-time job was in digital marketing, so I was doing social media all day, and then I was doing it for myself, like personally, and the band,
Hmm.
and it was just way too much social media. So then I was going to take like a full nice break, and then the pandemic started. Where I was like, well, now we need to be connected. Like, everyone needs to be connected
Right.
online more than ever. So it's not really the time to do it. But it's always this kind of exploration of staying creative from like the way it started, or the reasons you write music and the reasons you connect with people, and then knowing you have to promote your music and the trends you might have to follow
Yeah.
or ignore. And then obviously how you can just see every other artist now and how much you compare yourself or you have to
Oh, yeah.
think of, and yeah, it's every day is just kind of this, it's a beautiful struggle's not the way. I don't want to call it a struggle, but it is like a beautiful kind of challenge, right? To blend all of that and then stay in it. And like for the band,
Right.
like we've been, 12 years is a long time, and we're continuing to find new ways to be creative and be excited about the work we're doing. And I'm just grateful that we're, still all committed to doing it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think like, and it's especially like you guys originated at a at, in college, right? Like that was
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
and that and into your 20s and everything like that's a really like pivotal time and like that's where a lot of change and growth and things like that happens. And so to
yeah,
like not gonna say withstand that like it was like this huge like obstacle to overcome and stuff like that, but like to be able to evolve as individuals, but yet still have this foundation, have this common ground, and have this, coming together and being able to do that for upwards of a decade is, there are people that do it themselves that just kind of pop in and pop out with less. So, it's
yeah.
definitely a feat.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think what's been so helpful for us is, like I mentioned, from the songwriting side, if one of us is feeling a creative block, there are two other people who have ideas, right? And so if that happens at any point with, music itself or just the whole picture, I mean, there are two other people who are committed, to fall back on and to support each other. And we are so grateful to be able to have that with each other. And yeah, I just it's it's been years of it, and we always just know, like, the music is bigger than the three of us. Like, what we've been able to create and the connection it's had with others and continues to have is just the most important thing. So that's it makes a lot of things feel silly in comparison to kind of this bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. This is the point in the podcast where I take a question from last week's artist for this week's artist.
Oh wow,
And the
that's
question
cool.
from last week is if you were to take one of your songs and flip it into another perspective, what song and what perspective would it be? Like kind of like an alternate timeline, an alternate like if,
Ah,
just kind of if it's more of like a relational kind of thing, who would you take it from the other side? Just kind of a different spin on something from the catalog, if you will.
wow, that's a good question. Who asked that?
That was Nicole Ash, I believe, from last week. Yeah.
Cool. Shout out to Nicole Ash for putting me on the spot with this question. Man, hmm. I mean, a lot of our songs are certainly inspired by relationships, and I think that is an easy answer to take one of those ones and hear it from the perspective of the person at the time. But I'm trying to think. I almost don't want to fall back on that. I want to find
Yeah, something that
something
could use an alternate ending, maybe.
an
I
alternate
don't
ending.
know. Not to put more songs on the table
Well, but
for you, but
then if we really Jeff would like this idea because he's a huge fan of Back to the Future,
okay.
and we released a cover of Earth Angel because of its use in the song and all that kind of stuff. But that whole time travel perspective starts me thinking about well, if we switch a song and change the ending of it, then that might mean that the song never even happens because the ending for any of these heartbreak songs of mine would have been positive, right? I'd be able to change that and hopefully the perspective would like I'll say, especially for my early days, and something that I think so many artists just have to deal with is overthinking, right? And it's way to kind of control your life. And so it is very possible that some of the early songs, I'll say just of mine that I've led, because this is a good question for Brian and Jeff to answer separately, of course, but I'll say our song Someone Else. It's from our first album. And it's also top of mind because in this recent live session, or another live session we did, we brought that out of the catalog and we hardly play it live anymore, but it is probably it's my most obvious. This is a heartbreak song. This was my 20, what year would it have been? 2012, 2013. And it was one of the first ones I started like working on with the guys. But it is very possible, like looking back, and if it was from a different perspective, that I was overthinking different elements of a relationship, and maybe with the type of communication I've tried to work on throughout my life, I would have learned that the perspective was different or something like that. So maybe that's what I'd choose. And then Gettysburg, real quick to add on to that, that song's about the Civil War, and it's not. It is influenced by a story from the Civil War about Jenny Wade, who was the only civilian casualty of this war. And so, if we could hear part of it from, obviously, it's not even from her perspective, like officially, because this was the 1800s, but if we could hear it from her supposed partner's side of things, this guy, Jack Hastings Skelly, I think is his name. And that would be cool. He was a Union soldier. So,
No, that's
and me,
definitely
and me
No, go
bringing
ahead.
that up is also my way to pivot from talking about actual personal things. So it's like, there you go. Now I can talk about American history or something because it's not about me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that would be really interesting, especially given that it was like in its own way from the real, like you said, it was from the story and everything, like having that, it was I'm not going to say that, songs we write about our own personal experiences aren't like an actual, like real thing, but like to have it be
Yeah.
like, so distant because it was from so long ago and
1863. Yeah, yeah.
yeah and so long ago from just I mean that's I don't even think that I knew that that was like a thing. There was one civilian casualty.
No, and
uh
I
yeah.
don't know that I would have known if we didn't play a show in Gettysburg. And
Oh.
I had actually, because of the show, my dad gave me a book called Fallen Angels, which is it's one of the best like retellings of the war. And we went to Gettysburg. We played this show. We spent a day or two there, and then we explored the battlefield a bit. And we stayed right next to her Jenny Wade's house. It's now a museum, so there's a hotel there, and so obviously that was like in our head. And then afterwards, I had this piano melody. I sent it to the guys, even without the connection to Gettysburg fully in my head. But they said, this kind of sounds like a battle scene, like this melody. So I said, well, you know what? I'm not in a state of heartbreak right now. Actually, this is a pretty good stretch for me. So why don't I write it about the Civil War? Why don't I write about Gettysburg? And that's how that song came to be. So yeah, that's I'd be interested to hear a different perspective of that song.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
It's a
and
good question.
that's yeah, no, it's a good question and it's a completely unexpected answer. Have it be the partner of the one civilian casualty of the Civil War.
Yeah, and I
But yeah,
also I don't know that much history for anybody who's listening. I know a bit about that, and then like people are gonna be like, "Oh, this like I don't really know much." So that's the like my trivia my trivia thing is about that stretch of the Civil War. Yeah, and so I'm gonna have to think of a question to ask the next week's
yeah, that's what
guest,
I was
huh?
just gonna
Okay,
ask you.
okay. Um, hmm. And so your guests are like they're a whole mix of artists, like in
Got
terms of their musical instruments. So
yeah, we've got genres
it's
across the
kind of
board.
hmm.
Sometimes bands, sometimes just solo artists. It very much
Okay.
varies.
Hmm. Well, I'm kind of inspired by this last question, but I want to see if I can make it a little, add a little more depth to the question I'm thinking, which is essentially, I mean, I can only really play piano. I started learning guitar when I met, before I met Brian and Jeff, and then I was like, why would I bother? These guys are too good. I'll stick to piano. And but I'm always curious of, how if you could only play, maybe we'll do it like this. If you could only play one other instrument to start writing your music, like if I couldn't play piano anymore and I was forced to either reimagine my songs with a different instrument or have to write in that way, what instrument would it be? And and is there a song of theirs that they think that instrument could help tell the story in a new way? I guess it's kind of a mix of changing the perspective, but something instrument related. We can workshop it and see.
So you started down the path of if you could only play one other instrument, which I interpret as something you don't already
As
play,
something
because you said
you
like if you can't play
right.
piano, you'd have to play something else
Yeah, like if you
to
had to
like
change your
write from
instrument,
there on out, or like where you
yeah,
to
I
play
guess
from there on out, to have to perform for the rest of your life.
mm, it's kind of like that desert island question. Like, what's the one instrument you would take on a desert island? But also it would probably be the instrument people play. So I guess
Right. Trying to force
yeah,
them out
like
of the
what is
box.
right? So like what is the instrument that they think if they could play any other instrument,
Hmm.
if they had to play any other instrument, what would it what would it be? We'll just go with that. Yeah, if they can, but hopefully they think about it in a way of like the the meaning behind their songs from from this
Yeah.
podcast perspective, like a little
Yeah.
more depth. So
Yeah. So if the piano fell off the face of the earth, what are you using
mhm.
to carry out the rest of your artistry? You know?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would have to. Somebody told me the other day I should learn the harpsichord because there's a classical piece. I mean, there's a bunch of them, obviously, but one of them is strictly harpsichord. And I was like, well, that would be my sneaky way of pretty much
Still,
knowing how to play a
yeah,
harpsichord
still
or
kind of
organ or something like that.
yeah, still kind of holding on to what you
Yeah.
know without,
Hmm.
yeah, there is
I
a lot
would
of
love to play
similarity.
like, yeah, I would love to play like a brass instrument though.
Yeah.
But I think if I had to answer this own question for myself, as cool as like a French horn would be,
Hmm.
I don't really think trying to express my songs through French horn alone will really do them justice. So maybe I'd have to pick guitar or something like that. I don't know. That's a boring question. I feel like I could have done better.
You packaged in a creative way though. We ended up in a creative, you can't because you kind of then have to think through the lens of, what can take the place of what you kind of do already, what fits the way that you create, because that's going to be different. Um, I would lean a lot more to a stringed instrument than I would to
Mm-hmm.
a horn or something personally. And I can, you'd have to build it and approach it differently. So it's interesting because, piano and guitar, you can get all the notes at once if you really want
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
These other ones, you'd have to build layers and stuff. I had somebody, a ways back, I think at this point, probably at least a year ago, ask if you something with like if you had to make a song that was exclusively with one instrument, and it couldn't be
Mm,
something like piano necessarily, because that's you with how much you can build, but like an individual instrument and just build a whole
yeah,
song
yeah,
out of
yeah.
it and have to carry out those different parts and everything. What would it be? So,
That's a good one. Yeah, and I mean, it, Jacob Collier's latest album. I don't know if it came out. I know some singles of it came out, but it's strictly guitar. But he said, and I don't know how familiar you are with him, but people always kind of rag on him a bit for being like so maximalist and having so much going on. And I'm curious if this new album for him was a sort of like, I'm still going to play whatever I want, but I am going to show that I can stay more acoustic. But then he says like, yeah, it's all guitar, but that also means like the percussion and the this and
mm,
that. So I think he's done cool things with it, but it's not just like here's three guitar layers in my vocals or something.
right.
But I would love to play cello if I could.
That was going to
That's
be my
another.
answer as well. I almost took orchestra when I was in elementary school. I went and did the little like test out the instruments thing, see what you want to play. And I came home and I was like, I told my parents, I was like, I want to do the cello in the orchestra. And then my mom was like, well, didn't you want to take piano lessons? And then I was like, oh yeah. And so I did that instead. So if that conversation hadn't happened, I would be not here. I'd be playing
Isn't
cello
that
or
crazy?
something. I don't know. I don't know what I'd be doing if I grew up playing cello.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
all my siblings, I'm one of five, and we all either got violin or piano lessons. So I
Okay.
got piano, and there was a point where I mean, I didn't practice as much as I should have. Like now I'm 32 and I'm looking back, I'm trying to get back to my classical roots and play sheet music again and all this kind of stuff. But there was a point where my dad was just like, "Hey, do you still want to be in lessons? Because like we're not going to keep paying for them if you're also not practicing as often." And it was the classic like I'm a high school kid, I don't want to practice. No one wants to play scales, but I stuck through it, and yeah, I mean, who knows what I would be doing if I didn't do that. I also like I played little league baseball, and
Mm.
I kind of used music as a way to not have to try out for the last year that I could do little league because I was kind of nervous and I was like, I don't think I'm good enough to play baseball or whatever. But maybe I would have ended up being a real baseball athlete. Who knows?
Yeah. It's always interesting how things kind of, whether we try to avoid it or let it just happen, how things kind of pan out.
Yeah.
So everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you think sets you guys apart from other independent artists, bands, etc.?
I think it's our songwriting style and the fact that we genuinely pull from three different singers, three different instrumentalists, and we are just continuing to try to blend the way we write to, like I said earlier, to have a song that I play lead or sing lead, and we switch to one of the other guys, and we've written in this way, or like we're also conscious of, a lot of our songs they start with guitar, so like let's start this one with piano, and let's change the singer for this one or do something like this, and I think also there is a real also like I mentioned, there's this genuine presence throughout all of our music, and one of the things that's really important for all of us, but I'll say for me, from some of the songs that I've led, in particular, A Moment Slash Joy, which is a single that we put out during the pandemic, and Movement, and Warmth in Winter, which is our holiday song that we are always just very proud of because we've invited our friends and listeners and family to sing as part of the recording and to contribute different elements. And A Moment Joy, I mean, it was a song during the pandemic, but I asked our friends and family to send moments and listeners to send moments of people or places they missed, like audio recordings. And it turned into this 8 minute song where this last stretch is layering, like kind of what I want to imagine is in the direction of John Bellion in terms of like you said, with all these things that you start hearing when you're focused on them. And that one was super proud. I'm super proud of it because I mean, we just we try to make sure that we show our appreciation for our listeners and the people in our lives, and we're able to do that by actually having them within the music. So that one is those three, and then even Crystalline on the new album has a choir that we built from 30 or so of our friends who are singers, and Warmth in Winter has a choir as well from one of my good friends who we went to the same high school, and then a couple years ago he became the conductor for the choir that we were in back in high school. And so I asked him like, "Hey, would you have your students like this choir sing on this holiday song? Because we're looking to get a choir." And like all those little elements that I think keep us trying to stay creative and do new things, but always at the core connecting with the listeners and our friends and family and each other and just trying to maintain a genuine approach. So
Yeah, and I think like when you get people involved, um, and not necessarily like in the way of like, oh, you have to get them involved to have them care, but like when it comes from like that's just a cool experience. And I feel like oftentimes those things are felt in the outcome of the song, and the song that people hear is like, the like a live choir like that is going to be so much different than if you guys were to have just done like 30 vocal takes a piece. Like,
yeah,
like it's going
sure.
to have a lot, it's going to have a more impactful feel and a more like, it's going to convey that vibe and that message and that, connection and things more than just kind of doing everything in the box, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, back in my college radio days, and I've talked about this before, but I remember the feeling when I used to email some bands and ask them to send me and my co-host James, one of my best friends. We had the James and Steve show at 88.7 FM Rutgers Radio, but we used to email bands and say, "Hey, we have this radio station. Do you have any merch that we could like promote and do giveaways and this kind of thing?" And just the feeling that I got when a band got back to me and was kind and connected, and they didn't have to do any of this really. And so I've always tried in our in our social media approach and just as the way we connect with people, like I've tried to put that at the front, and I just like yeah, I know what the feeling is like, and not to say that's the feeling everybody gets when in any of our connections, but that is just like, oh, it can be so simple to do something a little more with a little more intentionality and connection. So always just trying to do that.
Yeah, because also like you have to, I think it's easy when you're independent. Maybe it's a little bit easier, but you still have all the tasks when you're a group because it's not all just on one individual's shoulders. But like
Yeah,
there's so much being independent that you have to do, and so many bases you have to cover in order to, check all the boxes. And so it's easy to get bogged down by the aspects of artistry and being a band that aren't your favorite thing. Like a lot of artists hate doing the social media thing. And it's easy to
Yeah,
get like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. But at the end of the day, you still have to find a way to enjoy the experience along the way
yeah,
because that's what you kind of got there for in the first place. Like, we're not
absolutely.
just here because, like, oh, it's some huge, like, it's not, we're not getting rich quick here, right? Like, so there's
Right.
this personal passion that drives this. And if you're not enjoying the experience and you're letting all of these other aspects of it bog down that experience, you're starting to devalue what you ultimately are after here. And so, finding opportunities to make it a point of connection and to convey these, messages from a wholesome, if you will, like origin point, like it's a lot more important to put the right energy and effort into it than it is to make sure that you've dotted all your T's and crossed all your I's. That was wrong. Dotted all your I's and
Dotted T's.
crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. I as soon as I said the first part, I was like, wait, that definitely was the wrong. Dotted all your T's and crossed all your I's.
Yeah, but you had a great setup. Everything up until
I
that
had
point,
it. The
it's
punchline
you
did
nailed
not
it.
hit, I guess. So
No, but yeah, that's exactly it. And I we just know we know that there's something special there, like you're saying, that the people who are these listeners of ours from 10 years ago, 11 years ago, like some of them are now my closest friends who we met just through SoundCloud or through like I don't even know who's really on SoundCloud these days, but like in 2011, it was the first place we released music, even before Spotify. And the fact that those friends have stayed with us and like you said, like that sort of connection is the reason we're able to still even be here promoting music or talking about music. And in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where Rutgers is, we have just an insanely supportive community of other artists and friends, and the music scene within New Jersey and the East Coast has been just so kind to us, and that is really the staying power that we get because anytime we get an email or a message from somebody who's just said what the music has meant to them, I mean, goes back to what I said before, where we know it's bigger than the three of us. We know it's bigger than any any little other moment. It's like I'm still. I don't think there will ever be a point when I'm not just still thinking, wow, our music means that to you, and you felt you wanted to email that or send a message or send it, and like it's a very humbling experience, and I'm just grateful for it. So yeah,
I feel like we've kind of already gotten there with everything that we've just been talking about, but I do always ask it, and so I will give a opportunity for a summarized answer,
sure,
if you will. But
okay,
what impact do you want to have with your music and with your artistry?
yeah, that's. I think for people, I mean, we can go back to the very start of the conversation where if people feel overwhelmed through it, that they can access at any point of the year or their lives. I think that's the impact on a person to person scale. I think for all of us, we're very interested in ways our music, if we can have ways to fund different initiatives through concerts or, different nonprofits that we've worked with over the years and different things like that. I mean, that's very important to us. But yeah, just having a place for anybody to find some catharsis there, I guess. Like knowing like I have all my favorite bands that I can go back to whatever album and have that feeling again. And even if they're bands I don't know or I've never spoken to, there's a feeling. So hopefully people feel that they have that with us.
I think that brings us to our final question, which is why music?
Oh, that's you should name a podcast after that.
Where do you think I got the
Why?
idea?
Why music? Hmm. There's a there's a mug that I've seen that says like, "Is there life before coffee?" or something like that.
Mm.
And I feel like that's the like there's an equivalent for music where I mean, for me, it is just either led to or enhanced so many of my connections. One of my favorite things is if I meet someone from another country, like I thankfully because of my years of like musical research, I have a pretty good catalog of like artists from other countries, right? So its ability to connect with others and it's the same like music and food are they cross cultures, they connect people, and I think that's why like that's what we need more than ever to be able to connect with each other. And I think I don't know art in general has that ability, right? But I think music there's just something there that yeah, I want to be able to connect with people. It's the best way that I know to do that and the way that I feel I can do that. So that's that's why to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
There
I
you go.
think, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the cliche is music is a universal language. I like that you
Hmm.
included food though, because that I don't think I've really had mentioned, but it is like it's kind of in that same way where it's like we might not be familiar with what's going on here, but like because we have that same thing here, we can
Yeah.
understand it in its own kind of unique way, and give it the space to be the experience that it is. And it's always, there's never any harm in trying new things unless you suddenly find out you're allergic. So,
That's a good point. Well,
yeah.
yeah, and this is not music related, but it is food related, and it's I mean it is kind of music related. It's about this whole piece. But one of the things that I've been doing recently that I'm really enjoying is I lead, and I don't have a formal certification for it, but I've been leading an English class for non-native speakers locally, and they're all adults. It's specifically about like business English, but we talk about anything that comes up. And it has been one of the most rewarding things in my last couple months of doing it because I mean, I'm a guy from New Jersey who loves to travel and everything, but I don't really have like my family is Polish, but I consider myself a guy from New Jersey, right? So I'm like so excited to meet with these other people who are super local and they're from all over. And the food came up because my last class, the last two classes, different people have been bringing in some food like as a surprise. So we had a woman from Chad who brought some food recently, and then some Turkish women who brought coffee and a specific pastry that they made and all that kind of thing. And I always ask them what music, like what's their favorite music from their country. So that and food, and each week just having that new sense of connection, something it's just something I'm very, very proud of, and something I'm very like I'm always looking forward to it. So if anyone has the opportunity, this is to the viewer. I've been looking here the whole time, but obviously it's like I'm supposed to look right there. But yeah, if there's a way, especially now, to connect with people from other countries, like especially if you're in the U.S., I think that's a great way to do it. You can check with your library, see if they offer anything, or your local place. So yeah, that's my plug. Aside from all of our music, and aside from uh, just college radio, those are the big things.
Yeah, no, and again, like you're a product of your environment, like we said, and so I think part of that is like one of the first episodes I ever did was this guy was talking about like, you have to just like actually just at some point just live life and do things because like if you don't allow yourself to have experiences, let alone new experiences, like then you're going to just keep writing about the same things and your perspective isn't going to change. If
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
kind of give yourself the space to evolve and take in new ideas and new experiences and be able to do these things in order to, further your perspective and evolve as not only just a person, but as a creative. So
Yeah.
that's really cool though, to get,
Thank you.
that experience like that.
It's just been really rewarding. So we'll see
Yeah.
we'll see what somebody brings next class. I'm hoping it's just before Thanksgiving. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. You can check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.